everybody. Um, Something I want to talk about. I saw, I saw an interview with Crawford. What was he on? Breakfast Club, maybe. Breakfast Club, and they were talking about if he should fight Boots. Um, he was talking about if he wants to fight Boots or not, and he said something that's pretty interesting to me. Um, Hold on a second. What do I gotta guess? Hold on one second. Okay. So he was talking about if he should fight Boots. And he said, look, it's like I worked my ass off to get to this point. So he goes, I'm a fight. What's up, Smoke? He's like, can I get you in here? I'm gonna get you in here. There's a way I can get you in here now. I just don't know how to do it. Add guest. Ah, fucking hell. Copy link. Um, an invite Boots. I mean, waiting for guests. This thing is acting weird. Are you guys there? You see me? All right, we're back. All right, it froze up on my end. Anyway, so Terence Crawford said on the Breakfast Club, he goes, I fought my ass off to get to this point, right? So they asked him, well, what about Boots? Do you want to fight Boots? He says, Boots is not a big name. At this point, Crawford is looking to do two things, right? He's looking to make money, and he's looking to secure his legacy. So, although for us boxing purists or fighters or whatever in the game, Boots would be a huge fight for like the earth, like it wouldn't generate as much money. And I think Crawford put it as a lose lose situation. He said, "Look, if I beat him, I'm beating up on a young guy, right? Um, a guy with no experience, um, and they're gonna say, well, he had no experience. You should have beat him." Now he didn't say this, but if I lose, then I lost to a young guy. So that's what he meant by lose lose. Um, so right, it's a lose lose situation. But we want to see it because let's be honest. Do you guys think there's anybody else who could challenge Crawford like Boots can right now? I mean Charlo, but that's you know Charlo is fighting Canelo, so Charlo's off the table. Charlo is off the table. Um, so I guess I want to talk about like, does a fighter have the right? Of course they have the right, but what do you think of a fighter deciding to not take the toughest challenge? I personally think that this point in his career, orientation locked. Okay. At this point in his career, he has earned the right to fight whoever he wants. If he wants to take an easier fight, I think he's earned that right. He's gone through everything. People don't understand how hard these fighters train, all that they go through um, to get to the point that they're at. So I'm curious what everybody thinks about, criticism. Do you guys criticize a fighter who doesn't take the hardest possible fight? Or do you think a fighter has earned the right to not fight the hardest fight right then and there, especially when it doesn't make sense business wise? Because, it's a business. And if you're going to take risks, right, and you're risking your life, man, You should do what you want to do, and it should be the highest amount of money possible. You know what I mean? Like the highest amount of money possible. Um, I think Tyson Fury is doing that now, right? He's fighting a real easy fight. I mean, I'm not saying that and the guy wasn't a great MMA fighter, but he's not a boxer. So Tyson Fury's kind of taking after those 3 fights with Wilder. Come on, and then the other fight he just had. Well, he actually just took 2 other fights that were somewhat not as challenging, but those guys were real boxers. Those guys were top tier fighters, even though they weren't much of a challenge for Tyson Fury. So, is there something? Is there anything wrong with a fighter taking a fight that isn't as challenging? Who only fought 20 undefeated fighters? Yeah, I mean, Boots hasn't. Okay, so Boots' talent is top tier, right? But that's true. His resume is still building. I mean, although he has 31 fights, I mean, he has more fights than Crawford. I mean, than Spence has, which is kind of crazy. Um, but it was a lot of, I guess, build-up fights or sharpening his sword. So now, you know, I get when people say that Boots doesn't deserve it, but then I also get when people say that Boots does deserve it because skill-wise, who else could challenge? I mean, to me, Boots fights a lot like Terence Crawford, like very similar. Switch hit, boxers, punchers, aggressive, smart, skilled, slick boxer. Boots has all of that. So he reminds me a lot of Terence Crawford. So it would be a lot like Crawford fighting in a mirror if he fought Boots. But he has no interest in fighting Boots right now. And I get that too. I think there's too much criticizing in boxing. And, if Crawford wants to fight somebody who is going to only build his legacy and his bankroll, then he has the right to do that without criticism. People don't understand how hard it is and what it takes to be a fighter. I mean, I did it at a much lower level. Imagine at that level where Bud's at, you know, nobody should tell you what to do, who to fight. You do what you want to do, and you do most importantly what makes sense business wise because there's no 401ks in boxing. There's no insurance. There's no pension. There's no union. There's nothing. So it's on you to build your pockets right now. Pad your pockets, build your bank account, set yourself up for the rest of your life and your family because nobody's going to do that. And I've been in this game a while and I interview a lot of people, right? And an overwhelming majority of people end up with fighters end up with issues related to head trauma once they retire. Everything from just slurred speech to memory problems to you know neurological problems. Um, you know, it's a messed up game, and you have to take care of yourself. So I'd love to see him fight Boots, but I get his stance on not wanting to fight Boots. I think the problem is who's left who's left for Crawford to fight? Like, who's left? Who could we see him fight right now? Canelo and Charlo are out because they're fighting each other. He doesn't want to fight Boots. If he doesn't want to fight Boots, he definitely doesn't want to fight Virgil Ortiz. He wants to go to 54. Go at Tim Tszyu. That's another lose lose. Tim Tszyu is a great fighter, hard puncher, but he's new. He's not going to bring a draw. When you're at Crawford's level, there's only a few draws that are at Crawford's level. You got Canelo, who's a higher draw. You got Tank. Maybe he'll fight Tank. I think Tank's too small, but catch weight. Um, Tank. I heard Tank recently say that he thinks he could knock Crawford out. Um, you guys think you can knock Crawford out? I, ugh. I mean, I love Tank. I think Tank, to me, Tank is number two pound for pound in the world. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but whatever. To me, the way I look at pound for pound is a couple things. First, I look at resume. Resume is important. Who you fought. Two, I look at your physical talent, right? Like how talented you are. So to me, those are the two things that are the most important. Not having belts. Belts to me don't mean much because a lot of times the road to a belt isn't a difficult road, right? But you have fighters who have fought, don't have as many belts, but have fought way tougher fighters and looked way better. So to me, it's about who you fought and how you looked fighting them. So with that criteria, that's my criteria. Crawford number one, Tank number two, Canelo number three. Canelo has the best resume out of anybody in boxing by far, and he's only taken two losses, one to Floyd early in his career, and Floyd's one of the best ever, and the second loss to a bigger man in Bivol. Um, Canelo really had no business at 175. He beat Kovalev, so it got him gassed up. So he came back for more. It was a mistake. So that's why I kind of don't think Canelo really slipped much because of that one loss to Bivol. Um, so that's why I have Canelo at three. Um, at four, now it starts getting tough when you start doing 4 or 5. I mean, is Spence still in the top 10 now after the loss? Should one loss take him out of the top 10? It was a dominating loss, so maybe it should. Um, Number four is, who do you guys think? That's my three, top three. Uh, Crawford, Tank, Canelo. Inoue, yeah, Tommy. Um, Inoue is he's another guy. So his skill is amazing, but he hasn't really fought that. He hasn't fought anybody, but that's also not his fault because at his weight in his weight class, I mean, besides Fulton, who we stopped, who we looked great against, that's one major name on his resume. So it's hard for me to put somebody with one big name on the top 10. But at the same time, it's not his fault that there's nobody at his weight class. So, you kind of got to weigh the two. So I guess anyway would be in the top 10. Um, I'm trying to think who else. Who else you guys got? I mean, who else am I missing here? Fury, Usyk. You have to put Usyk. Oliver says Bud versus Floyd would be a mega fight. Well, it would be, but Floyd's not going to do that. I don't. I mean, you never know, but that's not going to happen. I think Floyd's done with that with real fights. I think in terms of he'll do exhibitions, but he's not going to fight uh, in his prime champion, especially like Bud. But you never know. But Usyk should be in the top 10 because he was undisputed cruiserweight, right? Undisputed cruiserweight. Uh, been rolling through the heavyweight division. So I think Usyk deserves to be there over Fury because Fury really, the only great fighter Fury fought at heavy, well, he fought two. He fought an old Klitschko, which, although he was the first guy to beat Klitschko in like 11 years. And then he fought, obviously, Wilder. So he has two big names on his resume. So does that put somebody in the top 10? You heard some people say Floyd would beat Bud as of today. Possible. It's possible. Um, Look, I'm 40. I'm the same age as Floyd. I'm 46, and I feel just as sharp as I did. So skills don't always erode at 46. Haney. Tommy says Haney. That's a tough one. I've never. I think Haney's a great fighter, but he has one loss to Loma, right? And Loma's one of the greatest fighters of all time. When all is said and done, he will be. So yeah, I think Haney deserves to be there. Charlo probably deserves to be there. Jamel, for being undisputed, undefeated. Wait, is he undefeated or he's the one who lost once? I forget. I could get the two confused. But the one who lost once, that kind of was a bullshit loss, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Isaiah. I think Charlo should be there, for sure. Okay, so we got those three. Then we got Charlo, and we got, anyways, that's five. Usyk, that's six. So there's four more. what four more you guys think should be in the top 10, pound for pound? Um, you can go with Shakur. Do we put Spence in still? Does that one loss erase him from the top 10? I don't know. These things are, top 10 again. It all depends on your criteria. To Harrison, right, 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 right. Charlo lost to Harrison, but that kind of was a bullshit loss, right? And in the rematch, he washed him out, if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, I think Shakur maybe deserves to be there, but again, same thing with competition. Shakur is another fighter. You have a lot of fighters now who show highest level of skill, um, but haven't the resumes are still not where they need to be. But that's not their fault. They're still building. Better Biev, yeah, Better Biev is another example of somebody who probably should be there. I mean, all knockouts, 100% knockouts, 100% knockouts. So right, but who did he fight? But again, is that his fault? The light heavyweight division is not really. You just got Better Biev and Bivol, really, right? Anthony Yard. Didn't he just beat Yard, Better Biev? Yeah, Better Biev just beat Yard, didn't he? Alvarez is in the top 10, Hop. Alvarez, I have Canelo at 3. Um, definitely. I don't know what General Zod means, but is that me? Joe Smith? Nah, I don't think so. Oh, you're saying he beat Joe Smith? Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I mean, who else am I missing? Oh, okay. One of my favorite fighters, I totally forgot, Benavidez. David Benavidez definitely deserves to be in the top 10. Um, Better Biev. I hop. Give me a second. Better Biev is excuse me. Benavidez is definitely up there. All right, the list so far. Um, in order, the first three, in my opinion: Terence Crawford, Tank Davis, Canelo Alvarez, and then not in order, we got um, Haney, Charlo, um, Inoue, Benavidez. I don't know about Tio. I love Tio. Like I know Tio, and I think Tio is an amazing fighter. But because he has those two losses, even though there might be reasons for the losses, like I kind of believe the reasons for the losses. The first one being that his heart, not his heart, the air stuck in his chest or whatever was impeding his performance. And then the second loss to Cambos, not to Cambosis, to not the second loss, the fight where he didn't look that good, where he said, "Question, do I still got it?" um, his dad told me this directly, was like, that's my fault because I told Tio to come out and just not box but try and knock everybody out. He did that against Cambosis, if you remember. He was just coming right out trying to kill him, and it backfired on him. So I kind of believe those losses, but at the same time, that's his fault. So it doesn't take the loss away, it doesn't erase it. But my point is, I still think he has greatness in him. I don't think those losses really or define who he is. I think if anything, he's going to learn from those losses. So does Tio belong in the top 10? I don't know. Um, Usyk, yes, Usyk for sure. Usyk is. I don't know if I mentioned him in the recap, but Usyk I did mention earlier. Usyk definitely deserves to be there. Tyson Fury, maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe. But again, he only fought. He only beat two, you know, great top tier fighters. He beat a lot of other good fighters, but only Klitschko and an old Klitschko and what's his face. I don't know. RSV. I don't know if Spence. What do you guys think? Should Spence still be there? Does one loss wipe Spence out of the top 10? Joseph Torres asked, "Who do I got, Canelo or Charlo?" That's a close one, but I would have to if I'm gonna lean, I would have to lean towards Canelo. Um, because the size advantage. Canelo has a size advantage, not height, but frame and the punching power. So I'm going to have to lean towards Canelo, but I'd say 60-40 maybe. Um, Isaiah asked, who would I take out of the top 10? I mean, who's top 10? Like, that's the whole thing that we're talking about. The main thing about top 10 is criteria, right? Like, what's your criteria? Let me hear you guys tell me. What's your criteria for a pound for pound list? Mine is two things: resume and and performance, right? So, not belts. A lot of people think, well, certain fighters should be up there because they have all the belts. I don't necessarily agree with that because the path to getting belts is not always a hard path. And I'm not diminishing anybody who gets a belt because I never got a belt. You know, getting a belt is hard, but it's not an easy path to get a. It's not a. It can be an easier path getting a belt. So, I kind of think of it this way: if you shrunk down a certain fighter, right? Like, let's say you take Anyway, you take Canelo, and let's say you shrink Canelo down a weight class, and you stretch Anyway out another weight class to where they meet at the same weight class. Who would win? That's how I kind of think of the greatest. Who would win if they if they somehow became the same size with the same skill level they have now, right? So, Inoue looks very impressive, but he might be him and Tank might have the same problem. JJ says, regardless of weight, who would win if they were both? That's what I just said. Um, Smart man. Um, Tank and Inoue, I think, have the same issue, which is I think that they're both going to be limited by their size, meaning because of the height, right? Even though Tank could put on weight and maybe go to 47, he's still 5'5". So at some point, the size is going to make a difference, and it's going to limit him, and it's going to become a disadvantage. And the same thing with Inoue. He's started at. You guys probably know better than me. What did he start fighting at? He's at 122 now. What did he start at? Probably like 118. Did he start at 105? So how much further could he go up? Could he go to 135? That's almost a 15-pound jump. That's 13 pounds from what he's at now. Would he carry the same power? And more importantly, forget about if he carries the power, because this is something we've seen traditionally over time. Can he take the power of a naturally bigger man? These were things that we saw with my boy Jeremy Williams, for example. He wasn't a natural heavyweight. He went up there. His power carried into heavyweight, but the heavyweight punch was a little much because physiologically his body wasn't built like that. It's hard to take shots from a bigger dude. Um, so those are the limitations I see with Tank or Inoue in the future. Bivol better Biev, Hop, yup, that'd be a great fight. Same size, Shakur beats everybody, Isaiah says, except Bud. I don't know. Shakur, to me, the jury's still out, in my opinion. He could be one of the greatest. He's a guy that could be one of the greatest fighters of all time. He has those tools. But I can't say that yet because the resume. He hasn't been challenged. And no discredit to him, man, because he's trying, man. He's trying to get those fights to show. I think him seeing what Bud just did and him and Bud are close. He's like, now it's my turn to go in and do the same thing. So he's pitching for those fights. He wants Loma. He wants, Haney. He wants everybody. He didn't want to fight Kambosos, which again I get, because Kambosos isn't a fight that's gonna make people say, "Oh, Shakur is that guy now because he beat Kambosos." No disrespect to Kambosos, but Kambosos, his last fight didn't look that good. Um, and Haney, beat him pretty easily twice. So Shakur's the kind of guy that is gunning for the top spot only, right? He's not gunning for mediocrity. He's gunning for greatness, and that's what happens when you're around people like Bud, or you're around the best. That's what happens. Jay says, "Has Shakur ever been rocked by somebody like Tank? What would Shakur do in Tank?" I would have to pick Tank over Shakur, and I know a lot of people don't agree with that, and that's fine. But I think Tank, and Deontay Wilder to me have a similar thing, one similar attribute in common. Deontay Wilder knocked out everybody, right, that he fought except for one person that he beat, I should say. And people were saying for the longest time, oh, all he has is a right hand. All Deontay Wilder has is a right hand. He's not a real fighter. His fundamentals are bad. He's wild, blah, blah, blah. But when that right hand lands on 100% of the people that you've beat, now keep this in mind, 100% of the people he beat, even when he fought Stavern in the rematch, he did, no, 100% of the people he beat. No, not 100, excuse me. Stavern, so 99% of the people you beat. When that right hand lands on 99% of the people you beat, it is no longer a lucky punch. It is part of your skill. It is a designed technique that is traps are set, things are done in the fight, fashioned for that punch to land. So now that his punch is a skill. People try to say the same thing about Tank. Well, Tank was losing to Barrios. Tank was losing to Santa Cruz. Tank was losing to Rolly before he landed that one punch. Now the Rolly fight, I don't know if he was losing to. I watched it over. It looked like it was even or maybe Tank. But the point was he wasn't dominating. But that punch, Tank's equalizer, lands every time. So it's no longer a lucky punch. It's no longer. I don't look at it as a negative attribute. Like, well, he was losing, and when he gets in there with somebody who, I look at it now as a positive. Like, oh, he's able to land that punch on everybody. So now that being said, that's why I give Tank, and Tank's resume is better than Shakur's. And Shakur doesn't have the power, at least he hasn't shown it yet, to keep Tank off of him. So Shakur would have to be perfect for 12 rounds. Tank would just have to land one punch, which he's proven he can do almost 100% of the time. So that's why I would lean towards Tank if he fought Shakur. But I do think Shakur has it in him to possibly be able to wash Tank out and do. Shakur's talent could be next level. He just has to prove it. Tank already has proven it. So I got to lean with the guy who's proven it. That's all I'm saying. But are they going to fight? I don't know. To me, that's the fight. It's Tank for sure. The most interesting fight, the most exciting fight in the lightweight division by far, tell me if you guys agree, is Teofimo Lopez versus Tank. Whew. Two guys with power, two guys with speed, like I was just talking about. Two guys who could end that fight with one punch at any time of the fight. Tank versus Teo. That's right, Nicholas. That's exactly what I just said. And two guys who are exciting, have speed, have a technical ability. People sleep on Tank's technical ability. Like I just said, all those punches he lands, that's all technical ability. To land that punch, it's not luck. He doesn't close his eyes and land it. That's technical. Teo too. Teo can box. We just saw him outbox Josh Taylor, who, by the way, is significantly taller. I met Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor's about my height. I'm 5'11". Teo's probably 5'5", 5'6". That was a big height difference. And Josh Taylor wasn't able to use his size advantage over Teo. Teo was just too sharp. You don't want to see a drain Teo at 135. Look, here's another thing people need to realize. When you're dealing with 130, 135, and 140, all those guys could fight each other, and all of them could do it and not be drained. When you're dealing with 5 pounds one way or the other, at those weight classes, that's nothing. Nothing. To me, if Shakur moves up 5 pounds and fights Teo at 40, it would not be an excuse Shakur saying, well, that's too big for me. 5 pounds is not too big. Same thing, if Teo went down 5 pounds, it's not an excuse saying I'm drained. That's not. Now, when you start getting up to what Spence just went through, 7 pounds to 10 pounds, I'm not saying Spence lost because he was drained, by the way. I think he might have been a little drained, possibly, but I don't think it would have made any difference in the outcome of the fight. I think Crawford. But the point is, when you start going up in the higher weight classes, then the weight classes make a difference. And then you can use that amount of weight being drained. That's going to wear you out when you're starting to take off 10 pounds, 15 pounds, but not 5 or 4. When you go down to 118 to 122, that's 4. 122 to 126, that's 4. That's not going to make much of a difference. Loma size difference between 130 and 135. I don't think there's much of a difference. Here's what the problem is. Loma is probably a 25 pounder because Loma's about 5'5", maybe 30 pounder at best. So he fights Devin Haney, who gets down to 35, but Devin Haney is probably a 47 pounder. I doubt Devin Haney's going to even stay at 140. So that's why it's a size difference, because you have a guy who is probably 125 to 130 at Loma naturally, comfortably. Then you have a guy at Haney who's probably 147, right? 130 to 140, 147. So now you're looking at really about a 10 or 15 pound natural size difference and a clear height difference. So that's Loma's problem. Loma should stick to the lower weights. Loma fighting Inoue would be like dope. That Loma could make. Loma could go down to 26, or he could definitely go to 30. Thank you, JJ. I appreciate it. So there's a lot of fights that could be made, but the problem is a lot of fights aren't being made. Right? We're dealing with a lot of that. Spence Crawford took 5 years. Uh, it all started back with Pacquiao and Mayweather, right? They should have fought 5 years prior. Loma's prone to get robbed by judge. Nah, I mean, I don't know about that, Oliver. I think the Haney fight was very close. It was a lot of flurries being thrown by both fighters, not landing clean on both sides. Hard to judge. Loma threw a lot more flurries. I should say not flurries. A lot of punches landed. Loma flew more flurries. Haney landed more 1 or 2 shots. So it's like, okay, do 1 or 2 clean shots every now and then mean more than a flurry where, like Haney will land 3 or 4 clean shots in a round. Loma will throw two flurries and probably land the same amount, but of those flurries, like he'll throw 20 punches and probably land 4 or 5 clean ones out of those 20, and Haney lands 4 or 5, clean shots. So it's all about how you perceive it. They probably landed about the same amount of punches on each other, really. But how did it look? So, thanks, man. Thanks, P. So, I don't know what that fight. That fight, honestly, for me, was slightly boring. I hate to say boring because I know fighters put their lives on the line and they train hard and all that. But aesthetically pleasing, that fight wasn't very aesthetically pleasing for me. I knew within the first 2 rounds nobody's knocking anybody out, so there wasn't even that chance of a sudden knockout to make it exciting. It was just a lot of flurries being thrown where you didn't see what was happening. Um, Isaiah says, "When you watch fights, do you watch as a fighter or a fan?" Uh, Fighter. Um, except when I watch Roy Jones, but he's retired now, so yeah, nah. As a fighter, I'm especially being in media. I guess I'm media. I try and be as unbiased as I can, even if I might like a fighter more than another fighter. But that doesn't take away when the bell rings. It's kind of like when I used to fight. A lot of those guys were my boys, but when the bell rang, even for sparring, I was trying to whoop them. What I mean? I went hard on them. So pause. But Demetrius Andretti, I think Demetrius Andretti is about to fight Bivol. I'm close with Bivol, and that's what I've been hearing. I don't think. I think Demetrius Andretti is going to take a vicious beating. Not Bivol, excuse me. Jesus. Benavidez. I think Demetrius Andretti is going to take a vicious beating to Benavidez. That should be announced soon. I think nobody beats Benavidez. I think Benavidez beats. I think he's going to move up to 175 and probably beat all those guys. Wow, in like 4 years, 2 or 3 years, Benavidez versus Beterbiev would be dope. But Beterbiev is getting old, so yeah, Sharif. Tank versus T.O. I was saying that before. That's the most exciting fight left in boxing. It was Spence Crawford, so we thought. Didn't turn out to be too exciting, but T.O. versus Tank is the most exciting. I mean, that's gonna be the highest level of boxing. You're gonna have the highest level of technical ability. You're gonna have the highest level of power, of speed, of defense. Um, those guys have good defenders. Tank and Tio don't get credit for being good defenders, but they're good defenders and great counter punchers, both of them. So I don't know who to pick. I'd have to lean towards Tank just because Tank hasn't lost and Tio has. But I've seen when Tio is at his top of his game, when he's sharp, he's hard to beat, man. He's really hard to beat. So, like, Crawford versus Spence wasn't close, but I would say it's still exciting. It was exciting, right? Okay, so it was exciting leading up to it and the first couple rounds, but let's be honest, weren't most people feeling almost like it was almost uncomfortable? It was almost like watching a car accident. Like Spence was taking His face near the end, the last 2 or 3 rounds, he did not look good. He did not look good. It felt like it should be stop it. So that's what I meant. That wasn't really a one-sided fight is usually not exciting. No, that's not true. A one-sided fight could be exciting. Mike Tyson was one-sided. He was real exciting to watch. But Crawford wasn't like it. Tyson was just like explosive and it would end quick. Exciting to see a performance. That's a superlative. Yeah, I mean, it was exciting, but not near the end. And it didn't. You wanted to see. To me, what's more exciting to me is a competitive fight. The most exciting fight I've ever seen, and the best fight I've ever seen, hands down, is Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo 1. That's exciting. That's a fight where that shit was not one sided. You did not know what was going to happen. It had everything. That fight had drama. And those of you watching, a lot of you I know are younger. If you haven't seen Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo 1, watch it now. It had everything. Highest level of technical ability, highest level of speed, highest level of power, drama, bending the rules a little bit, all kinds of shit, technical ability. Hopkins Trinidad. It was way more one-sided than Hopkins Trinidad, I think. Barrera versus Morales. See, I love that fight, right? But there was another instance. I have a problem with a fight where nobody's going to get knocked out. Like you just know. And it's a bunch of punches being landed that it's hard to see what lands. It's like flurries on both sides. And for some reason, the camera angles are always off, so you're not really seeing the punch land. Corrales, Barrera, and Morales was like that. Like, it was exciting, but at the same time, I knew nobody was getting knocked out, and I knew it was going to be real hard to judge because those punches were just really hard to see cleanly who's landing. So to me, an exciting fight is when it's really even and there's shots coming that at any moment can either end the fight or dramatically change the direction of the fight by stumbling somebody or dropping them. So to me, that's exciting. But again, boxing is all about criteria. It's all about what you specifically look for, what you like, what you want. So, I don't know. Hop said Crawford was even more dominant, but would still call Bernard's performance was Trinidad masterclass. Yeah, but Bernard, I wasn't a big fan of Bernard's. I found him quote unquote boring to watch. But the main thing I didn't like about him was, and I hate saying weight bully because you make the weight, but he's a 6'1" career middleweight who once he stopped doing that shit that he did, got all the way up to light heavyweight, which is his natural weight class. All his peers, James Toney, Roy Jones, all those guys were light heavyweights. He went down and fought De La Hoya, who's naturally at best a 54-pounder. Trinidad at best was a 54-pounder naturally, and he is naturally a 75-pounder. So remember what I said before: when you're dealing with 10 plus pounds in natural weight difference, that's when it starts being a bit of a mismatch and an advantage, size advantage for the bigger guy. So Hopkins was able to knock out De La Hoya, knock out Trinidad. But think about it: Hopkins was not a knockout puncher. When he fought guys his own size, did he knock most of them out? Nope. Did he even come close? Nope. So that's why he knocked out the smaller guys. So to me, it was a bit of a mismatch. But again, props to him for making the weight. It's hard to make weight. It's easy for the other guys to go up. De La Hoya, Trinidad, they can go up. They could gain weight. But for him, it is hard to make the weight. And he did have to deal with his own weight training issues. But, that's my thought on that. I was never quite a big fan of Hopkins. I love watching Roy beat Hopkins back in the day. But I liked watching, Hopkins had some fights that I liked watching when he beat Tarver. No disrespect. Tony Tarver's my boy. But, I was still pissed at him for beating Roy. So, and that was surprising. I thought Tarver was going to beat Hopkins, as a matter of fact. But didn't work out. All right, guys. I will check back in tomorrow. And until then, love, peace, and hair grease. Peace.